Hello, and welcome to Fighting Over the VCR. My name is Matthew,
I'm Nancy.
and we are brother and sister, and we grew up watching movies together, and we want to talk about movies because I like movies. Do you like movies?
I love movies. I think we've loved movies since pretty much the day we were born.
We were probably partially raised on movies.
Absolutely. The best babysitter ever.
There will be spoilers in this podcast.
Yes, this is a heavily spoiler-filled podcast. We will tell you at the very beginning of each episode which movies we're talking about. So if you haven't seen those movies and you don't want to be spoiled, you'll know to check them out and then come back to our podcast later.
So let's give you a little bit of background on why we're doing this podcast. Basically, there was a chain lettery kind of thing where you post something and then you tell somebody that they now have to post it and that kind of thing on Facebook. And it was based on movies that have influenced you, you grew up watching, kind of made you who you are. And we really, really kind of liked that.
It was a lot of fun. I think you'll see as we go along. What we plan on doing with our show is each week we're going to look at the lists that we each put together through this Facebook challenge. It was officially a 10-day challenge. I threw in a few honorable mentions because I don't like to follow all the rules. And we're going to look at our movies, like the day one movies. That would be our first episode. And you might find that sometimes our movies lined up perfectly where we picked the same movie. For all of these instances, we have seen all of the movies. All of the movies that are on my list, Matt's seen. All the movies on Matt's list, I've seen, except one, which I will watch before we record that episode.
So, because this podcast is going to be talking not just about movies, but about us and how it's affected our lives and growing up, and the fact that as brother and sister, we got to introduce movies to each other, and I got to see movies that I probably never would have watched because I have an older sister, and she got to watch movies that she never would have watched because she has a younger brother. Yeah. You'll probably hear us repeat or finish each other's sentences.
Because we grew up together.
So, so growing up, we were pretty, blessed to have TVs and VCRs and parents that, really supported us to watch movies. And, we would record movies off the television. We would borrow movies from the video store. Remember Warehouse? Yeah, you would go to Warehouse and rent movies. That was us.
Do you guys know how long it took Back to the Future to get on VHS? I specifically remember how long that took.
Oh my gosh, that was a nightmare. But Back to the Future we got to see in the theater.
We did.
Mom took us to Back to the Future.
We did.
And that was a great summer movie event. I don't think Back to the Future is on our list.
It's not on our list, but it might be on a future guests list that she may be sharing with us at one of these days.
Yeah. So, let's, I think that's all the background I wanted to give. Do you want to give me more background?
I don't think so. I mean, just know that we were the kind of kids that watched movies a lot. I mean, not just... We were never casual movie watchers. I mean, movies really helped form our identity more than reading did. Almost as much as music did, but movies in particular really became like an extra family member for us. I mean, we really loved movies a lot. And, it was probably... Watching movies together is probably the thing we did the most together growing up.
Right. And you'll see throughout this podcast that part of our just normal vernacular is quotes from movies and just things that inside jokes and all that kind of stuff is all from movies. And I think you're going to you get that a lot with brothers and sisters who watch movies.
Yeah. And this will become evident because of the lists that we're putting together, but we did grow up in the 80s, hence why we were fighting over a VCR. So a lot of our movies, especially mine, will be from the 80s.
I have a lot of 90s movies, actually.
I know you do. Yours go all over.
Mine go all over.
I may have deliberately wanted to narrow it down to the 80s.
Well, that's your prerogative. So we have two great movies that we watched over and over and over again. And I'm going to go first because...
Well, before you start, let's just say which movies we're watching. We don't want anyone to get too far into this podcast.
And get bored?
No, to be like, wait a minute, I haven't seen the movie Nancy's talking about, and she's about to spoil it. No, the movie I'm going to talk about after Matt talks about his is Say Anything with John Cusack.
And I'm going to just kind of nip this one in the bud because I pretty much think that unless you've lived under a rock or on Tatooine for the last 40 years, it's pretty hard to get away from the movie Star Wars.
Unless you're our dad.
Yeah, Dad, I think just because he's funny and trying to be our dad, constantly calls it Star Trek, which is not bad. I like Star Trek. Star Trek's great. I think that it's just different than Star Wars.
But I don't think he's actually seen any of them.
No comment.
Yeah.
No comment. So, like I said, unless you've been stuck on Tatooine for the last 40 years, so you must have experienced Star Wars in some way, shape, or form. It's been thoroughly ingrained in our culture and society. You can't go to Target or Disneyland or a bathroom stall somewhere without seeing Star Wars.
Wait. Bathroom stall?
Yeah, people quote Yoda on bathroom stalls. They don't do that in the ladies' room?
No, I haven't seen that in the ladies' room.
Do you not read the walls in the ladies' room?
No.
It could be hilarious.
I certainly don't think I've seen Yoda quotes in a ladies' room.
Leia quotes?
No Leia quotes either.
Boba Fett?
No.
Salacious Crumb?
Okay, we get
it. Anyway, there's toys and movies and books and conventions and porno and websites and fan fiction, and there's even a land coming to Disneyland in California. All about Star Wars. What does Star Wars mean to me? How has it affected me? Well, for me, that is the first movie I remember watching on a VCR.
Really?
Yes. I remember sitting on our couch in the dark and watching Star Wars as a family on our VCR. I'm not 100% sure Dad was present.
Was it tax season?
He would claim that he was not present, but yeah, that was great. And I remember the actual tapes. Now, I'm going to preface this with, we had a lot of movies on tape, and we weren't the kind of people who would like say, hey, I've got this one cassette and it's got Star Wars on it. We would have a cassette that was, recorded with extended play, and it would have multiple movies on it. So on this tape was first Star Wars, then Dumbo, then The Wizard of Oz. Now, you can read into how those movies connect or anything like that, but basically it's the movies that we had. And that tape got worn out, mostly because of me. And you
weren't watching Dumbo like a million times?
I probably was watching Dumbo because the tape would just continue on. And then, all of a sudden it would get to The Wizard of Oz. And not that I don't like The Wizard of Oz, but I would have I would just turn it off at that point. I saw it so many times as a kid. I loved this movie. I've watched all the sequels. I've seen them when they've been re-released. I think it was episode 1 when it was re-released as 3D. I like all the new movies that they're coming out with. It has affected my life in a way that I probably, as like a 3 or 4-year-old, didn't even think it would happen, but it did.
Well, even to this day, I mean, you've got how much of your wardrobe is influenced by Star Wars?
Not everything, but all my like bum around on the weekend shirts probably might be Star Wars related. I have some kind of funny, kind of jokey shirts that are Star Wars related.
Yeah.
But so when we did the 10-day challenge, I specifically picked a screenshot from Return of the Jedi, which gets to my next big fact, was that Return of the Jedi was the first Star Wars movie that I saw in the theater. My mom...
I think me too. I had to have been there.
Yeah. My mom recognized how much I love Star Wars and then took me to go see the Return of the Jedi. And
You would have been 4? 5?
it came out in 83,
Yep,
so
you would have been 4.
I was 4. And I can't believe I sat through that movie at the age of 4. But I was probably mesmerized by everything and super excited.
Well, and the Ewoks were kind of like Muppets, so...
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And another interesting fact that while preparing for this podcast, I kind of figured out that is going to be like mind-blowing to people is I'm pretty sure I saw Return of the Jedi before I saw Empire. Empire being the second movie in the trilogy of movies. And I think that the reason why I saw Empire before Jedi was because I don't think we ever got a dub of it until after I saw Return of the Jedi.
That's likely.
Because I'm meditating on what I'm going to say during this podcast, and I'm thinking about, my experience first watching Star Wars, and I'm realizing, oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure that I, for a small period of time, thought to myself, these movies are not in the right order. And being totally confused by the whole, how did he just now find out that, spoiler, that Darth Vader is his father? If you don't know that, you're
listening to the wrong podcast.
Yeah. But anyway,
that makes a lot of sense, though. And really, I mean, if you were only 4 when Jedi came out, it's not like our parents would have been like completionists and would have been like, "Oh, Matt, we cannot go to Jedi until you see Empire." It wouldn't have been important. And because VCRs were such an early invention at that point, people were just getting into the habit of even watching movies at home whenever they wanted to, let alone having a full collection. I mean, nowadays, 2 or 3 months after a movie comes out, you have the ability to own a film. Back then, I mean, I don't even remember how we even got those movies. But we're not going to question it.
We're not going to discuss that.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, it's been, a huge part of my life. I quote it all the time. I have a son who will do things, and I say the most obscure line from the movie, the original movie. He's just got too much father in him, and that's something that Luke's aunt says. So, I mean, I say things like that, and, again, it's just become part of my vernacular. I, gravitate towards so much of it. The art in it, the idea of all the different aliens, all these different things just really kind of spoke to me as a child.
I mean, it's likely the movies you've watched the most in your life, like on repeat, like by far.
Oh, any movie in my top 10 list that or it's not really a top 10 list, but in these 10 movies that we picked, it's a kind of movie where if I'm flipping through it on the television and it's on, I'll just stop.
Yeah.
I can just watch it.
Yeah.
And I don't need to watch it from the beginning. Don't need to pause it when there's when I have to go to the bathroom. I can just leave it on, and wherever I pick it up,
yeah,
I'm there. And, I don't really need to say a whole lot about this. I mean, like I said, there are so many people out there that love this movie. There's probably 50 podcasts or more all about Star Wars, and I recommend you checking them out and finding them if you like Star Wars, because, hey, why not? And, it's just kind of ingrained in my DNA. I quote it daily. I decorate my house with it. My wife and I love it.
You dress up at, is it for Halloween?
We did. We have dressed up in the Star Wars costumes for Halloween. Not at conventions, just at Halloween. I'm not really comfortable with that.
You have your boundaries.
I have my boundaries. I have my
Very
personal,
legitimate.
Yeah. And we even used the throne room music at our wedding when we after we got married, when we're walking back down the aisle instead of the traditional music.
It was the greatest thing ever. I remember asking them. Because I was there, I got to be the maid of honor, and I remember asking all of these kind of like pre-wedding questions, and they were very generous in sharing all these plans they had. And I asked Sherry, I'm like, okay, what is the music you're going to be walking to after? She goes, oh, we're not even telling you that, because it was one of the best surprises. I don't think I've ever been to another wedding where they thought to use that after you are now pronounced husband and wife. Never before, never since. It's amazing.
Well, I'm sure we're not the first people to do that.
You're the first people and the only people that I know who've done that. And I can say I've known plenty of Star Wars fans, period. Yeah. I mean, our age group, Star Wars is a very, very common, movie obsession for people in our age group, but I don't think I've known of anybody else who's used Star Wars in their wedding. So, awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's, so not too surprising that Star Wars made it to one of our lists.
Yes.
And, I think that I'm really looking forward to all the stuff that they're going to be doing with Star Wars. I mean, my initial reaction when Disney bought the rights to Star Wars was a little surprising and slightly concerned, only because at the time I was not totally supportive of Disney at the time, but my tune has changed.
Suspicious.
I was suspicious. I was.
I mean, what kind of Little Prince? Was there going to be a Star Wars musical? Is that what you were worried about?
Not really a Star Wars musical, although, regardless of what it was about, I probably would have watched it.
I mean, Star Wars already has princesses, so it kind of fits the Disney model.
Oh, no, there are a lot of, I think you can go online and there's various websites, trying to make Princess Leia an official Star Wars or a Disney princess.
Oh my God.
And that would be great. Although, I don't know how, maybe in Star Wars Land they can have Princess Leia there, and you can take her picture with her, and they'll have to have the signature that is perfect for everyone who is Princess Leia there and everything.
Well, if they do officially make her a Disney princess, I really hope people address her the way that Han always addressed her, your worship, and all of his really sarcastic, unimpressed terms for her being a princess.
That would be interesting. I mean, I'm sure that some people would do that, and then others would just be in awe of her. I mean, Princess Leia was, really a, when you hear other people talk about Star Wars and Princess Leia, the immediate thing that people want to talk about is her in a slave costume.
Ugh.
And that was never my main point of focus. I always liked Princess Leia actually in Empire. She really took charge in Empire. Yeah. She had the way that she was acted by Carrie Fisher was amazing in that movie.
She saves Han.
I mean, there's just lots of really great things about Princess Leia as a character in all the movies, even when they did the sequels, now that they're doing the sequel trilogy. Her character is great in those movies. So
yeah, she's amazing.
So yeah, Star Wars.
Well, one fun thing about Star Wars and the movie that I want to talk about is that Star Wars features a brother and sister pair. And in the movie I want to speak about, Say Anything, which came out in 1989, featured John Cusack, Ione Skye, and John Cusack's real-life sister, Joan Cusack. This movie, I feel, unlike some of the John Hughes movies, which I also really love, and one of those appears on my list, Say Anything kind of represented what I always wanted to imagine a high school romance being. Like Lloyd Dobler kind of became a blueprint of what the ideal boyfriend would be for me. And Matt and I did watch this movie quite a bit growing up. I saw it in the theater. We grew up near 3 theaters, UA, Southland, and Festival, and we were walking distance from both UA and Southland.
You could walk to Festival. It was
a long walk. I never walked there.
I walked there many.
It was about
times.
two plus miles from our house, but UA and Southland literally were under a 20-minute walk. I went and saw Say Anything by myself. I believe it was the summer between 7th and 8th grade, I think is when that came out. This movie is amazing. Say Anything takes place. It starts at the high school graduation of Lloyd and Diane and a bunch of their friends. And, Lloyd has had this crush on Diane.
Since they met at the mall.
A few days prior. But he's got like almost an obsession about her. But he wants to connect with her. And let's just say this girl is almost like an alien in terms of how she's presented as this perfect girl. Like she's winning a scholarship. She's a class valedictorian. So she wasn't ever really part of the high school community. Lloyd was. Like everybody knew who Lloyd was. So he's able to convince her to go out with him for a graduation party. And they end up spending the entire night together. He ends up having the dubious honor of being a key master, where he's got to judge the soberness of everybody at the party. And if someone isn't sober, it's his responsibility to get them home safely. Well, she is a trooper, and she sticks by him. This is way before Ubers existed, so she doesn't think to get an Uber or a Lyft ride home after, by like midnight or 2. She stays with him, and she feels so grateful to him because he kind of helps get her introduced to this high school world that she was always shielded from, kind of self-imposed distance that she had from the high school because she was always thinking so far ahead into her future. But he got her in there, at least for this one last. He was very protective of her through this whole party. And, you get to see him with his friends. He's got one very fragile female friend who, do you remember the little song that she sings? Joe Lies.
Yeah, she, her character is just broken up with her high school boyfriend, Joe, and she is a musician and has written 65 songs.
I think so, and she's determined to sing all of those songs like that night. And this guy is like complete freaking garbage. The exact opposite of Lloyd Dobler. He keeps just screwing with this girl. He keeps breaking up with her and getting back together with her, just torturing this poor girl. Her name was Lily Tyler's name. Either Diane and Lloyd are able to begin and have this amazing summer romance. They're constantly getting he's getting feedback from his sister, who she's having a lot of hard times too. Lloyd is surrounded by a lot of women who've been screwed over by guys. Like, sister is recently divorced. He has a cute little nephew that he gets to play with, and I think Matt and I used to talk about the little kickboxing thing that he would do with the nephew. Mm-hmm. Anyways, his sister's messed up. He lives with his sister. The girlfriends that he hangs out with, they're all messed up. And then we find out as the movie plays on that Diane and her perfect relationship with her dad, her parents are also divorced, is a big giant lie too. So she's in a messed up relationship with her dad. Again, this is a spoiler-filled podcast, so big reveals here. Alongside the summer romance story of the movie is also this kind of long, almost like Robert Mueller-like investigation into Diane Court's dad. He's basically been frauding old people and running, paying for his life with all this money he's been stealing from these old folks that have died, and he's just stolen their wealth. But he's hid this from his daughter, of course, all these years, and, investigators kind of get her involved, and, the climax of the movie is the dad telling Diane, you need to break up with Lloyd because he's insanely manipulative. He's been manipulative her entire life, but putting her on a course which you would think, oh, okay, big deal. She's going to be this, rock star human that is going to be in a brilliant university and have this amazing life, that he was, very manipulative in getting her there, but pretty much robbed her of any kind of normal teenage experience. And Lloyd is this opportunity for her to have this kind of late teenage experience, but also just have this total love in her life. And when this whole investigation comes out and the feds tell her he's guilty, he's big time guilty, and he is going away, she realizes, you know what, I need to take the leap and make my life with Lloyd. So the movie ends with them sitting on an airplane. She's deathly afraid of flying also. They're sitting on an airplane, and they're able to fly away to England and begin their life. I mean, the movie ends with, the airplane seatbelt alarm dinging, and it fades to black to some Ann Wilson music. So, again, there's a lot that I've left out. Primarily, the most iconic scene is after Diane dumps Lloyd because her dad told her to. He's trying to win her back, and, he goes to their house and holds the boombox up with Peter Gabriel's In Your Eyes playing, and who hasn't seen that? I mean, everybody knows that scene.
I know that scene.
Well, you've seen this movie you've probably seen the movie, at least 5 or 6 times, right?
Oh, more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, you would watch this movie, during the summer. If it was on TV, you would put this on. I mean, that's why. It
was on one of our worn out VCR tapes.
Yes. And
although I don't remember the other 2 movies that were also recorded on that tape. Sorry.
No, I mean, and there was a lot of great things about this movie, things that hearing your point of view on it is actually really why this is so much fun to do. Is, I never even really thought about the whole, like, damaged women aspect of it, of Lloyd's life. I mean, I guess, in hindsight, he had this vision of what he wanted a relationship to be like, and he had seen, like, he was surrounded by bad relationships. I mean, one of the scenes that is kind of iconic in the movie is why, after Diane breaks up with him, because she's going to go off to England, and, she gives him a pen.
God, so ridiculous.
I gave her my heart, and she gave me a pen. He goes to a gas and sip, which is basically just like a gas station where guys are hanging out to drink and talk about how lonely they are and there's no women anywhere, and
too young to go to bars.
And in this scene, you have Joe, who is his friend's ex, sitting there, and a young Jeremy Piven, who
is a jerk in this.
Yeah. And
like 2 or 3 other jamokes that are just hanging out. And
who I don't remember who the actors are. Sorry.
But hysterically, like a 14-year-old.
Yeah,
too.
One of them's like 14. And and his classic line is, after all the guys are talking about how terrible women are and how they don't want to be in relationships, it pans to this kid and he goes, Bitches, man. And that became one of the many things Nancy and I said to each other all the time.
Bitches, man.
And, and Lloyd kind of has this epiphany, like, these guys don't know. There's no women anywhere around these guys. Why aren't there any women? And they're all just like, by choice. Yeah, we choose to not be in these relationships. And that's not anything that he wants. He has this idea of the relationship he wants. His parents, his dad wants him to go in the military. He doesn't know what he really wants to do with his life.
Because at 19, who does? But he's feeling a lot of pressure to have to figure it out because he wants to date this superstar woman who's got this whole future lined up ahead of her. But that's another.
And all he wants to do is be with her, really.
Yep.
Wherever she is, he wants to be with her and be supportive of her, and she be supportive of him.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions for you.
Please.
So you kind of said early on that this movie, because of when you saw it, kind of shaped kind of like your vision of what like a high school romance would be.
Mm-hmm.
So did John Cusack or just the romance in the movie set like all of your standards for what you want a relationship to be?
Well, I mean, I think his character certainly set an idea of like, wow, that would be amazing to have someone fall so hard for you and treat you the way that he treated you. That was awesome. And I mean, and I have liked John Cusack. I liked John Cusack years before this, but this gave me the window to see him as a romantic lead. I mean, we'd seen him in movies prior where he was very funny and more of a comedian, but this movie gave him a seriousness and a depth that I didn't know was possible. So I've loved John Cusack for many years because of this movie.
And he's been in lots of movies, especially like early on, where like relationships were kind of built around his movies.
Yes.
And this is just one of those iconic characters that he got to play where, you know, he's in high school, he's just graduating, and he wants to get his life going, and the only thing he really wants to do is be with the person that he loves.
Yeah.
You know, the most. My other question is about the director.
Cameron Crowe.
So Cameron Crowe, who did another movie that we grew up watching called Singles.
Yes.
And he's done Almost Famous, which could have made
both of
our lists. And Vanilla Sky, which is not really one of my favorites of his.
But he wrote Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah, he wrote Fast Times. Is this your favorite Cameron Crowe movie?
I think so. Yeah. It's the one I've certainly watched the most. It's the one that I feel the most emotional about. Yeah. And I haven't seen Singles in many, many years. I don't think I even own it on DVD or anything. So I wouldn't even know how to rewatch it at this point.
I think I can.
I'm sure we can all find it. That's not even a problem. But no, Say Anything is a movie that I definitely think about more than any of the other Cameron Crowe movies.
So at the end of this movie, they're on a plane. They're going to England because she has this huge scholarship to go to school in England. Lloyd has said, you know what? I have nothing for me here. I have my sister and some friends, but I need to go on with my life. And he gets on a plane with her, and he really doesn't know what he's going to do, but he's going to go to England. We do not ever, of course, get a sequel to this movie. Do you think their relationship lasted?
I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I think watching it at, age 12, I certainly hoped it would.
I think at age 12, you
or
don't even...
12 or 13, something like that.
I don't even think at that age you're even hoping it. You just assume it does.
I just assumed it would. I don't even think it dawned on me. I think the fact that they had already overcome the obstacles that they faced that summer, I feel like the obstacle of her dad being such a dick and really manipulating her so much, and she was able to find her way around it. And she begged him for forgiveness. She came to that kickboxing studio and.
I mean, Lloyd.
Yeah,
she did not beg her dad for forgiveness.
No. Diane begs Lloyd for forgiveness, and it didn't take him very long. I think he just said, she's like, I'm sorry, I love you. And he's like, what was that? She's like, I love you. He's like, can you just say it one more time? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not like he stopped loving her. I mean, regardless of, how hurt he was. I mean, he wanted it to work. But I'm an optimist. I'm a romantic. Yes, they made it work.
So you don't think that, they get to England and he...
What is she going to do? Get together with some British guy? I think he says something like to that effect. No.
That's very possible. I mean,
no.
You also said yourself, what does someone at 19 really know what they want to do with their life?
I don't know, though. I feel like... there was a maturity to their relationship, though. I mean, I think, and she
was there? It
wasn't trying to
it wasn't
change
like
him.
high school puppy dog love.
Who knows? But I want to believe. I want to believe that they stayed together, and yeah, it's not impossible.
I don't know.
It's
I'm
not
not trying to.
impossible.
I'm not trying to play like devil's advocate here, but I will. I mean, they're 19. She's going away to school. She doesn't. She's going to get a career. He's sitting on her couch.
He's not sitting on her couch.
We don't know what he's doing. I mean, he really showed little ambition to really do anything.
Maybe he needed a change of scenery.
Maybe
he just needed to be in England.
You're right. He probably needed to be in England, and he needed to discover what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And maybe what he wanted to do will lead him away from Diane Court.
I doubt it. Nope. I don't. I think they're still together. I think they're in their. Where would they be? Would they be in their like late 40s now?
No. Late 40s, early 50s now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. They're just still together. Late 40s. They're together. I believe it.
That's incredibly optimistic.
Yep.
Of you.
That's what I am. I'm very optimistic. And I'm a hardcore romantic. As you'll learn when you see some of the other movies that are on my list.
Well, now that we're done talking about Say Anything, I think, because I think that we're just not going to agree on how
well, I mean, you think that they broke up.
I think that the odds are very high that their relationship did not last because of the new experience. I mean, face it, okay. When we were in our 20s, we were extremely optimistic about how things could be. And then we got into our 30s, and then we were like, what the hell did we know in our 20s? Because in our 20s, we were like, what the hell did we know when we were 18? So, that's just how, things are as you mature, things change. Now, that's not everybody's story, but it's fairly common, I think. Mm. And the idea that they are still together is, probably the reason why a movie like that lasts is because people want that. We want to believe that Diane Court and what's his last name?
Lloyd Dobler.
Lloyd Dobler. I'm sorry. That Diane Court and Lloyd Dobler are still together.
Well, the movie.
I mean, isn't that what rom-com movies are about and all that?
I wouldn't call this a rom-com, though.
How would you classify this movie?
It is without classification. It's not a rom-com.
Is it a teen romance movie?
No, because it was mature. I'm not gonna put a label. It's a Cameron Crowe movie. Cameron Crowe movies sometimes fall outside of a specific classification. It's not a rom-com. Okay. And you know what? I'm gonna just make the point again. This movie is about a summer romance that has the potential for a lifetime because the movie starts on high school graduation day and we can say it effectively ends on her last day of summer because she's getting on that plane to go to school and they are going to school together. So I'm going to say, yeah, they're together still.
Yeah. Watch now that I think about it, like a lot happens in that
it's an intense period. Summer.
That summer.
They filled it with a lot of memories.
There's a lot of memories in there.
A lot of love.
Watch out for that glass.
Exactly. See, exactly. Yes, he kicks the glass out of her after being awake for a whole day, going to that dumb party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I haven't discussed this with Nancy, but I'm going to propose this is, this being a brother-sister podcast and this being a podcast where it's not just about the movies that we watch, but it's also about the relationships that we have. I think that it would be in our best interest to try and reach out to other brothers and sisters. And one brother and sister duo in particular. And since we've just talked about Say Anything, I really think that if anyone out there has any way of getting us together with John and Joan Cusack to discuss how movies affected them growing up, that would be the ultimate. So, anyone out there, if you have those connections, let us know. Because I think that would make for a really fun podcast, not just for us, but for you guys to listen to. So I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, we'll put it out there.
Okay.
We'll tweet him. We'll send him the link to our podcast on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't know if he accepts stuff like that. Yeah, I think he has to follow you.
Okay.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, thank you for listening. I'm Matthew,
I'm Nancy.
and this has been Fighting Over the VCR. Hello, and welcome to Fighting Over the VCR. My name is Matthew,
I'm Nancy.
and we are brother and sister, and we grew up watching movies together, and we want to talk about movies because I like movies. Do you like movies?
I love movies. I think we've loved movies since pretty much the day we were born.
We were probably partially raised on movies.
Absolutely. The best babysitter ever.
There will be spoilers in this podcast.
Yes, this is a heavily spoiler-filled podcast. We will tell you at the very beginning of each episode which movies we're talking about. So if you haven't seen those movies and you don't want to be spoiled, you'll know to check them out and then come back to our podcast later.
So let's give you a little bit of background on why we're doing this podcast. Basically, there was a chain lettery kind of thing where you post something and then you tell somebody that they now have to post it and that kind of thing on Facebook. And it was based on movies that have influenced you, you grew up watching, kind of made you who you are. And we really, really kind of liked that.
It was a lot of fun. I think you'll see as we go along. What we plan on doing with our show is each week we're going